Hey everyone, welcome back to the PFN Dallas Cowboys podcast. I'm Jess here with the one, the only Dalton Miller, who is wearing a shirt that says Big D on it, obviously standing for Dalton.
No,
What else would it be
obviously,
standing for today?
obviously standing for Dallas. It's a Cowboys shirt, everybody. It's a Cowboys shirt.
That
Just
tells you
wanna
where I'm at today.
just wanna
Honestly.
throw that out there real quick. It's a Cowboys shirt. Big D is in Dallas.
I just want to throw that out there. That's how much brain power I have today as we chug along. Mondays are pretty long, weird days, especially post game, going to the game, covering the game. You just don't get enough sleep, and that's okay. You love it, you live for it, but yeah, you guys have to work with me a little bit today as the brain power is very low, and the coffee has not been drinking yet. So you should be very proud of me for that in itself. But
I missed
Dalton,
my window. I
you
missed
missed
my
your
window.
window
I
for
usually
coffee?
So I had my coffee in the morning, which was hours ago at this point, and I
Right.
usually have a cup in the afternoon. I didn't realize just because I was a little bit behind today because I'm also up until like after midnight. I was up until like 1:32 a.m. my time, and that puts me at like a 9 a.m. wake up here, and I'm somebody who normally wakes up at 5. So I'm somebody that wakes up super early and gets like a bunch of stuff done. So like everything is behind. But like I go to bed really early tonight because I wake up for the Monday night game or about midway through it. So I
Right.
need my midday coffee to be like no later than 1 p.m. this time. And I almost went and just made coffee. It's almost 4 p.m. here. So it would have been a terrible mistake on my part.
You know what? That's okay. It's a
If you
Monday.
guys can't tell, the Cowboys just played the Giants and they're playing the Panthers next. So like not a bunch of in-depth, hard-hitting analysis about to happen here.
Yeah, we're talking about our coffee schedules here and the extreme lack of on my end. But Dalton, let's kick it off with your hot or not take because you know the people come here just for that. Let's give the people what they want. Dalton Miller, what's your hot or not take for this week?
My hot or not take is that since the week before Dallas went on a bye, Dak Prescott is playing like the best quarterback in the NFL. I want to preface that by saying the interception yesterday was horrific. One of the worst interceptions I've seen Dak Prescott throw. The rest of it was immaculate. The rest of it was as close to perfect as you could possibly be. And the only quarterback, I think, in my opinion, that is playing at a level close to that right now is Jalen Hurts. And Dak Prescott, just a week ago against the Eagles, I believe, outplayed Jalen Hurts. And Hurts was fantastic. But I think Dak Prescott right now, and I'm not saying that he is the best quarterback in the NFL because we know that he is not. What I am saying is that he is playing the best out of anybody right now.
Well, you know what? It's a hot or not take. And so is it a hot take? Is it a not hot take? And then
And honestly,
get
like
good at that.
I'm shocked at how good he was yesterday because there was a lot of pretty tight coverage. There were a lot of passes that I have not seen him be that aggressive, and he's gotten a little bit more aggressive as the season has progressed so far, and after the bye specifically, this offense has been more explosive. But some of the throws he was making yesterday, the deep one to Gallup, some of the ones to Brandon Cooks, where Cooks is being draped by a defender. He does not care. He's throwing it away from the defender's leverage, allowing his guys to go make a play. The throw to CeeDee Lamb and the catch from CeeDee Lamb in what was that? Was that the first quarter? Oh
Yeah,
my!
with the one-handed catch.
He just at the very last second just stuck that ball out there, and that's the kind of trust, and that's like when you're like playing pickup basketball and you hit a couple of threes, and then you're like, oh, next time I get just past half court, I'm throwing one up, I'm chucking it up. You're seeing how hot you actually are, and Dak Prescott right now is incredibly hot.
Absolutely. And you know what I really love is that it's a product of all of the things that you wanted this team to work on after how the team lost their season really and ended their season last year. And so product of communicating with each other, being on the same page. It's a product of Dak using a little bit more of his mobility than you've seen in
Mm-hmm.
recent years before the ankle injury. And it's a product of just the receivers and the tight ends. Can't not mention Jake Ferguson there as well. Just continuing to grow with Dak. And so you've seen a little bit of a slower progression with this Cowboys offense. But if this is what you get to see on a week to week basis, just improvement after improvement, that's fine with me. It's fine with me to start slow and then end quickly with the upward trend that this team I think is going in, especially on the offensive side of the ball. So let's get into a little bit more of this Giants matchup. Let's continue on the offense and let's talk about some weapons that we've been pretty much begging Mike McCarthy to see up until this point, and of course, that being none other than Brandon Cooks, Rico Dowdle, a couple of names there to mention. MG, you also mentioned, got a little bit more involvement. You saw some Jalen Tolbert. Heck, you even saw some Jalen Brooks in on this game, which is what you wanted. You just wanted a little bit more of that ball distribution to see what this full force Cowboys offense could actually look like. Let's start with Brandon Cooks because he is cooking. 9 receptions for 173 yards, 1 touchdown. Last night's game, and again, we're recording this on Monday, he had 173 yards. You know how much he's had every week added up until this point? 165. So one night just blew away everything that he has done up until this point. And I don't fault him for that. I think it's just been a product of the offense getting their footing, kind of seeing where he can fit in without taking looks away from CeeDee Lamb, without messing with that chemistry. So what did you see from Brandon Cooks and that you really liked that gives you hope that he can be more of a consistent threat in this offense going forward?
Well, I saw him have many, many, many fantasy points sitting on my bench, but I'm not upset about that
My
whatsoever.
gosh.
You couldn't start him. I just have been stashing him. But
You're a little
anyways,
salty. It's okay. You're a little salty. You can admit it. It's fine.
yeah. So with Cooks, I mean, it's just everything that I'm used to seeing with Brandon Cooks. I think that with his speed, using him as just a pure downfield threat, I think is a disservice to him because he is such a good route runner, such an explosive player, and he's a savvy veteran. I mean, he's a guy who has had 1,000-yard seasons with 4 different teams, and I hope that Dallas can be the 5th. He's an incredibly consistent player, and I think that just getting the feel for everything, learning to trust him a little bit more. Especially with some of the throws that were made yesterday, because it was not like he was streaking across the field wide open on a deep crosser. These were throws, in the red zone on the one, and then a couple of the big throws that hit him just right in the bucket, that you're starting to see that chemistry with Cooks that for so long Dak Prescott had with Michael Gallup. And it was nice to see Gallup as well get the big long catch from Dak Prescott as well. But I think more than anything, getting Cooks as a reliable second weapon on the outside is going to be huge for Dallas moving forward.
Absolutely. And again, I kind of alluded to it earlier, but I think kind of the hesitation with getting him the ball more was not wanting to disrupt what CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott have been able to do and really establishing that wide receiver one and quarterback chemistry there. But CeeDee Lamb also having himself yet another night. And I don't feel like this is the last time we're ever going to be saying this. I feel like we're just going to consistently have to give CeeDee his flowers week in and week out. 9 receptions, 151 yards, 1 receiving touchdown, and 1 rushing touchdown, his first of the season so far. He also broke an NFL record for having his 3rd consecutive game of 10 catches for 150 yards, at least 10 catches, I should say, for 150 yards. Congratulations to CeeDee Lamb. I mean, you go back to week 5 against San Francisco, he was begging for the ball. He said, "Give me the ball. I want the ball." And look at what you're really seeing out of that game and what came out of it. So look, as much as I hate to say it, if this San Francisco loss gave you this version of CeeDee Lamb, it was pretty worth it to me. Look, I am just all about what you're seeing with CeeDee as a consistent threat. I mean, you can't cover him. You cannot. You can try. You just can't. And CeeDee's going to make sure that the plays down there. One of the bigger things that Dak talked about in his post game press conference was there was that one play where after it had happened, you see CeeDee make this catch, and then you see Dak kind of stick his tongue out at the camera. He was asked about that play specifically and why he was sticking his tongue out. And he said, "Honestly, I was throwing the ball away." And CeeDee just made that play on his own. That wasn't even on me. That was all CeeDee. That ball was not supposed to get to anybody. And he said, so when I saw it, I said, yeah, that's CeeDee. So that was pretty much one of my favorite moments last night from the post-game presser. But CeeDee Lamb, what continues to impress you about what he's doing right now?
Yeah, I think that he's taken the next step. It's been a while. We've been waiting for him to elevate. When he was drafted, we all thought, he might be the best wide receiver in that class, and that was a pretty good class. It was obviously Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddle, and then also Justin Jefferson, who ended up being the best wide receiver in the NFL. But when it comes to Lamb, he kind of fell into Dallas's lap, and you were just always waiting for like the consistent elite production. And he started to do it at the end of last season, and this year he has just continued that and built upon that. I think that when you look at him, he's somebody who, he's not a 4-3 guy, but he's somebody who is incredibly flexible, ability to separate at will against man coverage, great contact balance and ability around the sidelines and innate hands, going up and elevating for passes, contested catches. He's a monster after the run as well, which is why I've been begging them to hand him the ball off a little bit more. And I was so happy when they gave him that end around, because I do think that he needs, 1, 2, 3 carries a game, try to get him to the outside, try to get Cooks to the outside, and try to help this rushing attack out just a little bit more. But when it comes to Lamb, I mean, he's right in that top 5 conversation in the NFL now, and that is incredibly elite company because there is so many just unbelievably talented wide receivers in the NFL.
So perfectly put as well there. And so we really saw, I think, last night what this Texas Coast offense can be when the ball distribution is a little bit more divvied, I guess, in fair proportions for who you're talking about. And so what I thought was interesting is this was the game without Kavonte Turpin. Kavonte Turpin was rolled out before the game with a shoulder injury. Definitely going to keep an eye on that. Maybe not this week. That might not be the week if you don't have to force him to get ready to go, and you can allow him another week of rest for that shoulder injury. Do it if he feels up for it and medical clears him. Then do that too. Whatever feels right. So we'll keep an eye on that throughout the week. But that you knew going into this that you were going to see a little bit more of those younger guys, if you will. We alluded to it earlier. Jalen Brooks getting some attention in this game. Jalen Tolbert. There's a lot of Jalen's. There's a lot of Jalen's going on
Yeah.
in the NFL just in general. And then not so young, but Michael Gallup, the resurgence of him. I was losing my mind. You
Mm-hmm.
already know I was losing my mind seeing this all unfold for MG this week. 41-yard touchdown, which to me, this is a game of confidence. This isn't necessarily something that MG can't do right now. He has the skill set. I don't necessarily think that what you're seeing is from the injury, despite what's being said. I don't think that's the case. I think that was more last year for him as the first to do everything again post knee injury. But I think what you're seeing is a confidence thing with MG. You're in a very stacked room with a lot of guys, and you kind of have to figure out, no matter who you are, whether you're CD, even Brandon Cooks, where do you fit in on this, especially when CD's the only one getting these first reads and these first looks from Dak Prescott on a consistent basis? So figuring out kind of where you fit in on that, it's a little difficult. So to me, I think it's just a game of confidence for him. I think it's something that this moment is needed to continue to skyrocket him forward, and continue to grow off of and show that, that trust is still there between Dak and MG. It's not necessarily anything but outside noise for them at this point, anything being said about MG. But really happy to see him get that moment. And it was nice to see what was it, vintage MG back in the end zone again.
It
So
definitely was, and you obviously you want to see it more consistently from him, but like you said, I think it's a confidence game right now with MG, and having a couple of those like really solid plays yesterday, I think is going to be big for him.
absolutely. And let's go into that rushing attack, because usually after these games, Dalton, I ask you, is the run game in the room with us? And it's usually not, but I can't say that this week because the run game was absolutely in the room with us. 168 rushing yards for this Dallas Cowboys offense. And another guy that I've been really high on since training camp, since mini camp, since OTAs, all the things, Rico Dowdle. So excited to see him have the night that he had. And he played angry. You want to talk about a guy that takes advantage of any opportunity he gets with that ball. Always going to be Rico Dowdle. So, what did you see from Rico? We'll start there and then we'll work our way back to Tony Pollard. But what did you really see from Rico Dowdle now that you got to see a little bit more of a full force Rico Dowdle that you liked?
Yeah, I mean, it's not as much about Rico for me. It's just more about the distribution of the touches between the two backs. And he got 12 last night. Tony Pollard got 15. It was clear who the more explosive and confident back was. I mean, something about Tony Pollard right now is just completely different than it was a season ago and the season before that. The explosive plays with him aren't really there. I think that he's kind of pressing a little bit and being a little bit quick in his decision making. I think he needs to be a little bit more patient. I think that Rico has been unbelievable. And like you said, he runs angry. And it's a lot of fun to watch him run in that way. But, shout out to the offensive line last night. That New York defensive front is pretty talented. Obviously, they traded away Leonard Williams, but they still have one of the best defensive tackles in the entire NFL in Dexter Lawrence. And then they also have a couple of decent edge rushers as well. And so it was a good day for the offensive line. And I just think Rico is a guy who needs to continue to just cut into Tony Pollard's time on the field.
And I don't think that's any shade to Tony Pollard. I
No.
think what you're seeing that's just it makes more sense is pretty much what you saw with Zeke and Tony Pollard, that 1-2 punch that just elongates both guys' seasons. I mean, you don't want to have to put your running back, your starting running back in a position to just be so worn out by the end of the season that it's a struggle to continue to get that burst, but if you have two guys that are willing, that are able, that can get you that yardage, especially with somebody like Rico, who's been chomping at the bit for years now to get this opportunity, he finally has it. Give him some more of the ball. I mean, I don't look, I'll make the decisions around here, obviously, but I'm just saying Rico's a guy that in the locker room, he's always a really team friendly guy. He's a good guy to talk to. He mentors his guys. He talks to his teammates. And not only that, he has really taken the initiative to be this running back too for this team in changing up his offseason training, changing up his rehab after practice to make sure that injury won't be an issue for him because he knows that really that's been the only thing holding him back until this point. So the conversations I've had with Rico just really come down to he's playing smarter football than he ever has. He's taking care of himself because he knows the opportunity ahead of him. So just really happy to see that. As far as Tony Pollard goes, yeah, no, you don't want him to be continually beat up and you see kind of a repeat of what we saw with Zeke and the roles have kind of reversed at this point. But that's a product of give your other running back a little bit more of the ball. There's nothing wrong with that. Tony Pollard's your starting running back, and that's it. So I'm interested to see what Mike McCarthy's response is this week to that question. I'm sure he'll be asked about the ball distribution between Rico and Tony a little bit more. But last week when he was asked about it, a little bit of an interesting answer from Mike McCarthy in the press conference concerning all of that. So interested to see what he has to say this week. It was an offensive showing for sure. Definitely a lot more offense. And really, that's kind of what you expected in this game. You just really wanted to see more of what the offense could do. But the defense, Duron Bland, anything but Bland, having yet another interception for this game. What did you notice from the defense? Is there anything you want to mention about this defense? Because it wasn't a horrible showing by any means. They got the job done. They were getting the Giants out of that game. I mean, the Giants' third down conversion rate. Let's pull this up real quick. Let's see. On third down, the Giants were 0 and 12 in third downs last night. Absolutely ridiculous. And you look at even just these numbers. I mean, poor Tommy DeVito, 86 passing yards, one interception. He had, let's see, his longest throw for the night was a 26-yard pass to Bellinger there. So they did what they needed to do. And the best thing about this is you got to see some of those starters get some rest there in the fourth quarter. What do you want to see from this defense? Obviously, Carolina is a bit of a weird matchup as well going into week 11, but what do you want to see from them going forward?
Well, I mean, the defense yesterday, I thought in the first half, they were turned on. and then they kind of flipped the switch in the second half and said, okay, we're going to play a little bit less aggressive. We're going to just kind of let them have, a couple of completions. We're going to let them go a little bit. We have this game handily won. Let's not get hurt. And that's kind of what it looked like to me. I sometimes don't like that because I think sometimes when you're trying not to get hurt, you end up actually getting hurt. Luckily, the Cowboys came out of that game pretty clean, but I just think it's an opportunistic defense. Deron Bland on the back end is unbelievable, the plays that he makes, and he always seems to be in the right position to make those plays. On top of just moving from the slot and playing a lot more on the outside and being as good as he has been on the outside has been a treat to see, because now you look at, their offseason needs a little bit, Stephon Gilmore getting a little bit older, and you think, well, we might need an outside guy, but if Deron Bland is this good on the outside, maybe we can open up our horizons and really just take the best cover guy we can. And, maybe that person ends up being a primarily slot guy. So just really fun to see the growth from Bland, and with Trevon Diggs coming back next year, it could be another very, very opportunistic defense in 2024.
Oof, it gives me chills just thinking about it, honestly. Trayvon was not shy to say how he was feeling last night on Twitter. If you don't follow Trayvon Diggs on Twitter, it's really fun during games because he is not holding back with those tweets at all. So always good stuff there. But special teams, just wanted to touch base real quick. Deuce Vaughn obviously in for Kevontae Turpin in this game. We had a deuce game, which was fun to see. Obviously, didn't really see a lot from him in this position. I wanted to see a little bit more from him on the offense, especially in the second half when things were kind of good to go. I think you saw more of him in the fourth quarter. Didn't really get to watch the fourth quarter. I was waiting down there by the locker room. But it is really cool to see just how much talent this Cowboys team has, younger talent specifically, that is going to come in handy as we get into the later portion of the season. Real quick, Dalton, who gets your PF MVP for this game?
I think it's got to be. Ooh, that's actually tough, because I was going to say it's got to be Dak Prescott, but I think the Brandon Cooks coming out game is a really big story and could be huge for this offense moving forward. So I'll give it to Brandon Cooks.
Well, because you gave yours to Brandon Cooks, I'll give mine to Dak Prescott because he continues to play at such an elite level, and you're seeing a new version of this Texas Coast Dak Prescott, which is boding very well for him. So big shout out to Dak Prescott there. Guys, we are officially in the midseason portion of our football season, which is wild. I cannot believe how quick this has flown by. Dalton and I figured it would be fun to switch things up this week before we talk a little bit, very little bit, about the Panthers matchup ahead, and do some mid-season awards since we didn't get to do it last week. But let's kick things off. Dalton, let's start with our most surprising player of the season, somebody who's really continued to surprise you from what you've seen so far.
There's only one correct answer to this, by the way. And
Is there?
It's Brandon Aubrey. It's Brandon Aubrey. He's been unbelievable. Okay. He's been unbelievable this year. And he came from nowhere. I mean, this is somebody who was playing professional soccer a couple of years ago and was, I believe, not even a professional athlete anymore.
Yeah, he was working as an engineer.
Yeah. And he's been as close to perfect as you can be as a kicker. And I think, maybe not, maybe being a professional, footballer helped him or didn't when it comes to the nerves, but to be in an NFL stadium and to have, everything on you, all of that, it's like being a free kick specialist or a corner kick specialist in soccer where, all eyes are on you. Where are you going to put this ball? And Aubrey has been absolutely perfect this year.
Okay, I'm going to say my most surprising, since you decided to take mine. I mean, kind of rude, but it's fine. I will find a way to live with myself. But I'm going to switch gears here, and I'm going to say my most surprising player is Tyler Smith, because what he did in his rookie year was very hard to replicate, if not continue to boost up. This guy has done everything you need out of a second year offensive lineman. He has played nearly perfect throughout the course of the season, and that is hard to do. The left side of that line, it's not going anywhere. It's not moving anywhere. And so for Dak Prescott to be able to play at the level he is, he will be the first to say it comes down to that offensive line there. So I'm going to give mine to Tyler Smith. And that's just because what he was able to do last year, already impressive, but what he's been able to do consistently and build cohesiveness and continuity within the left guard position, just really excited for him going forward. So that's my most surprising. And it's not that surprising, but it's really awesome to see him continue to do that. Defensive MVP, my friend, who do you have down?
I mean, it's got to be Micah. I would love to go with Deron Bland, but this entire defense revolves around Micah's talent and his gravity, I guess, is what you would call it. He makes everything else easier for the rest of the guys on that defensive front. And with the pressure that he consistently gets against opposing quarterbacks, it helps out this secondary as well. He is everything to this Dallas Cowboys defense.
You're just taking all of the answers.
I'm taking, well, like that one was an easy one. The surprising one wasn't an easy one, I guess. But I did take both of yours. I'm sorry.
No, you know what? I didn't have Mike down because, to be honest, I figured you would. And if you didn't, I could veer courses here. But I'm going Deron Bland. You mentioned him.
Yeah.
He's done everything you've ever asked him to continue to do. He can switch positions. It's insane to see what these guys are doing. And again, we're talking about younger players here. What they're able to do and replicate week in and week out. Mr. Pick Six, setting that Cowboys franchise record, not even halfway into your season, of the most amount of pick sixes in a season from the Dallas Cowboys. It's not exactly an easy thing to do, which is why the record exists, right? So for me, I'm going Deron Bland. This guy, he's scratching the surface of what he's able to do. And I'm really excited to continue to see what he can do. And we just talked about it with a full force, DB core with Trayvon Diggs back in there. So happy for him and happy for everything he's been able to accomplish this season. All right, let's work our way up. Offensive MVP, who you got?
Offensive MVP, I mean, it's the obvious is Dak Prescott because he plays the most important position in professional sports. But I'm actually going to go with CD. I think with the way that he has played, he is really elevating himself to the level that a lot of people thought that he could heading into his NFL career. He was unbelievable at Oklahoma, just an absolute bully when it came to attacking the football and being an all-around weapon, somebody who is a 3-level threat because of the way that he catches the ball, the way that he is as a route runner, and then his ability after the catch as well. And we're just finally starting to see him come into his own at the NFL level, and it's been pretty special. And he's going to make a ton of money this offseason.
You know, as he should. Take your bag, King. Take it to the bank, as he absolutely should.
And this is why I'm always a fan of getting deals done early.
Look, sometimes you have to bite the bullet. You have to bite the bullet. You have to do it. That is when I'm glad I don't work in the Cowboys front office. I'm really glad I can sit back and not worry about that.
I just need him to get paid before Justin Jefferson gets paid. Just make this quick right after the season. Don't let it go out. Don't try to haggle all that much. Get it done before some of these other massive wide receiver contracts come up.
Going to be an interesting offseason topic there to keep an eye on. My offensive MVP, obviously, yes, CeeDee Lamb has been incredible, but I'm going to go Jake Ferguson. And this is because you're asking a lot from a second-year player to step in and be your starting tight end. Tight end position as it is, not an easy feat. Not only do you have to be a pass-blocking threat, run-blocking threat, open receiver that can continue to open up the passing game, you are asking this guy to do everything, and he is. And given the slow start of the season with the drop passes, nobody's tougher on Jake Ferguson than Jake Ferguson. And he's going to continue to hold that standard for himself. He's a locker room guy. Everybody really enjoys talking to Jake. And he continues to elevate his game in his own way. And you're seeing a very Travis Kelsey-esque kind of tight end being formed within Jake Ferguson, which is so refreshing for this team when you kind of just look at the stint of starting tight ends that they've had in the last few years. You haven't had a guy like Jake Ferguson. So for him to come in, kind of set this new standard for that tight end room and that specifically starting position, I think is really special and very cool. Obviously, what you saw last week, and it's continuing to seep over, is the chemistry with Dak and Jake. And just, I want to see more of that. I'm very proud of what Jake's been able to do so far this season. Has he been perfect? No. But again, he's doing everything you need him to do as your starting tight end. And you're just barely seeing what he's capable of doing. Yak ability, hello, yak yardage. Absolutely undeniable, insane. Really excited to see how Jake Ferguson progresses throughout the season. MVP, who is getting your MVP award? And I think I already know who it is. So let's see. Dalton, who do you have for your MVP?
Yeah, it's Dak. And if Dallas beats Philadelphia, I think Dak is already in the actual league MVP discussion. Unfortunately, he was a foot away on the 2-point conversion and a foot away on the throw to Schoon on that fourth down. So I think those two plays go a little bit differently. Dallas wins that game. He's right in the MVP discussion.
I think he's already in the MVP discussion. I think you shouldn't have to rely on just that to happen in that game to win. I think the defense could have created takeaways, which also would have helped. And you could sit here and say, shoulda, coulda, woulda. Hey, had you had a pick six, that would have helped. But I think it's just undeniable how great of a season that Dak's having, especially just you look at the progression from the last couple of years since the ankle injury. And what you haven't seen, and alluded to this earlier again, is Dak was kind of nervous to move out of the pocket. Understandably so after the horrific ankle injury. I understand that completely. But now what you're seeing is an offense that is so framed around what Dak feels comfortable doing that now he's going out of his comfort zone and really giving you vintage Dak Prescott that is more mobile, that is getting that first look, being quick to release the ball, and just continuing to grow the chemistry. He's taken his time to grow chemistry with all of his threats around him. So I agree. I think Dak's the obvious MVP here in this discussion. But of course, I'm not going to make it easy on you. I'm going to have to give you another one because that's boring if I just agree with Dalton all the time. Who are we? What would we do here? I'm going to go Micah Parsons. And this is because, again, you already said that the defense is built around him, but he continues to just be a dominant force. Maybe stats aren't showing that, and they're not going to. His stats will never reflect how much Micah Parsons is doing with every single snap that he's getting on this defense. And I think it's so interesting because he brings up a higher conversation of those holding calls or the non-holding calls that aren't happening on him. And teams are playing desperate when they're playing against Micah Parsons. They always have, they always will, and they're going to continue to do so. But I'm excited to continue to see what Micah does as the season progresses, because something that's interesting is he feels healthier than he did this time last year. And that's the product of his offseason training and everything he's done up until this point. So to see a full force Lion continue to put pressure on opposing quarterbacks, look, makes me not want to be an opposing quarterback if I'm facing Micah Parsons. So I'm going to go Micah Parsons for my MVP. Let's wrap things up a little bit with your thoughts on next week's Carolina game. Again, it's one of those games that it's a should win for the Cowboys because they should win. However, is there anything that worries you about this kind of game? We're not using the T word because you know I hate that phrase. What is the biggest threat? And try to come up with something. What is the one thing that the Panthers can do that could pose any kind of pressure on either side of the ball for the Cowboys?
The Panthers can't do anything. It's the Cowboys, and just if they decide not to show up at all. And, humans are not reliable. We're not a reliable creature. We can wake up one day and feel like crap. We can wake up one day and just not want to go to work. Even if you are a professional football player, I am sure that they have days, and I'm sure that there's guys out there who don't want to be professional football players but are just so physically gifted that they ended up there. I think that when you look at this game in particular, Carolina, receivers who cannot separate from a paper bag, from a plastic bag waving in the wind. They are that bad. They are slow. They are not talented. They will not get open against this Cowboys defense. The offensive line is an absolute tragedy. And then you have Bryce Young, who is clearly not ready to play at the NFL level at a consistent basis right now. Against this defense, it's going to be ugly for the Carolina Panthers offense. Defensively, I think that they're really well coached. I think Evero is a very good defensive coach. They just don't have the talent right now. I think that as long as you're able to control Brian Burns, I think that you are going to be just fine offensively.
A 1-8 team, the Dallas Cowboys will face in their Week 11 matchup. The last game that they won was against the Texans.
Beat the Texans.
A couple of weeks ago, 15-13. And then they lost to the Colts, the Bears, and then now they face the Cowboys going into this week. Overall, this team, they're struggling, and I'm being nice. They are struggling. They struggle to put points up. From what I'm looking at, the most amount of points that they've scored in a game so far this season was 27, I believe. Let's see, 27 points against the Seahawks back in September. Since then, they just struggle to put up any kind of points. So this could be a feeding frenzy.
I believe that Seahawks game, I believe that's the one game this year, if I remember correctly, that Andy Dalton started.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Well, we'll keep an eye on that. You know, Andy Dalton does have, you want to have the little familiar opponent thing going. I mean, if you want to do that, you can. But this is a game that, again, the Cowboys really, I think when you look at their schedule going forward, you obviously have the Thanksgiving game against the Commanders after that. I wouldn't be surprised if what you start to see is not only are they preparing for the Panthers game, but they start their homework a little bit early to prepare for that short week for that following Thursday with the Commanders, kind of start peeking into that film as well, since that's typically what Mike McCarthy does do when he knows there's the Thursday game coming ahead, is he starts to kind of look ahead a couple weeks before in the opportunity that they can, so they don't miss any of that time for that Thursday game. But any other notes you want to throw in there about this Carolina game? Anything next week worth of football?
No, not really. I mean, it's pretty cut and dry, just like the Giants game was. I think that it's a cut and dry matchup, and I think that it might even be a little bit better of a matchup for the Dallas Cowboys.
Well, look, last time we said this on the podcast, I don't want to bring up the past. However,
the last time we said this on the podcast, they beat the Giants and put up like 70 points, which was just yesterday. The time before that was against the Arizona Cardinals, who had been keeping games close and playing well. I was a bit overconfident in that game.
Oh, man. Well, again, this is a must-win for the Cowboys. And not only just you're talking, continuing to get wins, Mike McCarthy is really big on winning all of your home games and then winning at least half of your away games. This team needs an away win. This team needs a win on the road. It has to be against the Panthers. Do it. Just start to get that trend going on that side as well. But Dalton, where can the people find you throughout the week to tweet you all of their gym picks and if they agree with your hot or not take this week?
Yeah, at Dalton B. Miller on X, formerly Twitter.
It's forever Twitter. Just forever Twitter. I'm at Jess Navarez _ on Twitter as well. Feel free to tweet me any Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce content that you would love to talk about, because I'm living for it at this point. Dalton, I appreciate you every week dealing with me when I have not had coffee. That's hard to do. It's hard to co-host with. So I really appreciate you. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in and dealing with us each and every week. We hope you enjoy listening as much as we enjoy doing this. Don't forget to leave us reviews wherever you listen to your podcast so we can continue to do this for as long as we can, Dalton. I mean, this is fun. We can continue this forever, really. So thank you guys so much. Enjoy the rest of your week. We'll be back here next week to recap all things Cowboys Panthers and then start to look ahead to the Cowboys Thanksgiving matchup against the Commanders. Have a great rest of your week. We'll talk to you then. Bye, guys.